just reiterate things when you get there.
Okay.
Oh, can you forward all of those to Jill for the minutes, please?
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay, we're all good now. We're good.
All right. All set, Mike?
Yep, all set.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'd like to call to order the June 2nd meeting of the Chagrin Falls Board of Education. Ms. Brudno, if you would please call the roll.
Mr. Rankin,
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey,
Here.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mrs. Brose,
Here.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Here.
Okay, if you could all find your local flag, and if you'd all please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Well, thank you, Mary Kay. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of
of the United States of America,
Yeah.
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Mary Kay. All right, thank you, everyone. If I could have a motion for the approval of minutes, we have May 5th and May 19th.
So moved.
And a second, please.
Second.
Thank you.
Just so everyone knows, there are a couple typos in there that are going to be corrected. In one instance, we gave Catherine an extra name. Her name was Mary Catherine Garvey. And then in another instance, we had a name switch. So those tend to get copy and pasted sometimes because a lot of the information is the same. So that was just an error. We will get that fixed in the actual minutes.
Gotcha. Anybody have any other comments on the minutes? All right, seeing none, Ms. Brudno, if you'd please take the roll.
Mr. Rankin,
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mrs. Brose,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes.
All right, great. Now we'll move on to board committee updates. Mrs. O'Toole, if you'd please take it away for audit and board policy committee.
Okay, for audit committee, just because Ashley probably wouldn't talk about herself too much, I just want to let you know that Chagrin Falls Schools has received the Association of School Business Officials International Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting for fiscal year 2020. The award represents a significant achievement and reflects the district's commitment to transparency and high-quality financial reporting. The certificate's mission is to promote and recognize excellence in financial reporting, said ASBO International Executive Director David Lewis. The comprehensive annual financial report informs stakeholders about the financial and economic state of the district, making it an important communication tool for building trust and engaging with the school community. So congratulations to Ashley, her staff, and everybody who helps with our financial reporting. So
Fantastic.
good job. And then policy committee, I have no report for that one. So Ashley, anything else you want to say or no?
No, not yet.
All right. That concludes my report.
All right, thank you very much. Ms. Garvey, if you would take on business advisory, capital planning, and board finance and budget.
That'll be easy tonight because there are no reports for any of those committees.
All right, and likewise, we have no report for record retention. Okay, at this time, I will turn over the meeting to Dr. Hunt.
Thank you. Mike, you want to share the PowerPoint, please? Everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So good evening. We are certainly very fortunate to be joined by Dr. Amanda Cooper from the Diversity Center, who's helped us throughout the course of the year facilitate some of the conversation regarding our DEIJ work. Dr. Fishman is here and Mrs. Waite, both teachers at Chagrin Falls Intermediate School and served as subcommittee chairs. Appreciate their time and effort with this, as well as Mary Beth Weber, who's a community member, parent of graduates, and co-chair of the school and community leadership group. So I certainly appreciate you giving up one more evening. I was going to count the evenings that you spent on meetings here, but I didn't want to really bring it to your attention tonight. So thank you for all your dedication throughout the course of this year and getting us to where we're at. All of these individuals and many others, as Dr. Cooper will share with us in a minute, have dedicated a great deal of time and energy to get through this work throughout the course of the year. And what I believe you will see tonight can really serve as a foundation for the continuation of the conversation and work within the district. I don't think you're going to identify specific areas and actions. What you're going to see is very clear goal statements with suggested actions as we move forward with the important work that lies ahead. So I think before we launch into the presentation, I want to give a little bit of context and some background for the work. This is a conversation that really began with the Board of Education last spring, as current and former students and even community members approached the district wanting to peacefully share their frustration with the events that led to the death of George Floyd. This led to furthering the conversation at the board level, and the board eventually approving a resolution regarding diversity and equity being adopted by the Board of Education, and an important kind of standard for our school district in terms of what we believe and how we act. There was also an interest in continuing the conversation to evaluate our district and better the experience for all of our students, regardless of ethnic backgrounds, race, sexual orientation, and gender. The district did engage the Diversity Center to help facilitate this initial step with a group of interested community members, parents, students, and staff. And the results of this work will be shared tonight, and the team members that share it certainly are a large part of laying the foundation for us moving forward. And I'm certainly, aware that the Board of Education has received 4 to 5 emails regarding the work with accusations and a few concerns. And I just want to address some of this now as we set the stage for the presentation. The work has not been done in isolation with a selected few. The Board of Education adopted the resolution June 18th of 2020 and approved this as an area of priority and a goal for the district in August of 2020. That same month, a letter was sent to every parent and community member that we had in our eBlast system, inviting them to participate and to contribute. There was significant interest, as you'll see here in a few minutes. In October, we provided an update to the district via our Super News and released the same update to the media. In February, we presented the Board of Education with an update of the work publicly, and both the Chagrin Valley Times and Cleveland.com wrote articles updating our community on our progress. In response to the Derek Chauvin verdict, the district provided another update to our parents and community, and again invited those interested to please step forward and participate in this conversation. That added additional participants that will be included in the work as it moves forward, as it is kind of articulated and planned by the Board of Education and the superintendent. This has been an extremely inclusive process, and I'm confident that that will continue, because if you're going to move forward in this area, it's got to be a community effort. Unfortunately, like many things lately, media and politics form a narrative, and that has happened with the collective efforts of school districts throughout the country attempting these conversations. While the team here this evening will articulate what this work is about, I'm confident that this group's efforts are about ensuring that we have and retain a culture that is just, equitable, safe, and respectful for students and staff. It's about learning from the experiences of those that attend our schools and live in our community that come from different backgrounds, and using that information to improve our school as a district, improving the experience for students. It's about preparing our leadership team and teachers to provide a more inclusive, accepting environment. What this group has not talked about is major curriculum reform, injecting critical race theory. It has not discussed changing of electives or courses. It is certainly not discussed a political narrative or that we're indoctrinating or changing history for our children. We are a public school district that is responsible for teaching the state of Ohio content standards. That has been and will continue to be the foundation of our curricular work. This group has thoughtfully identified goals and understands the importance of progress, but also understands the importance of pace. I'll reiterate, this is good work that will serve as the foundation for planning moving forward. And I kind of apologize for the long introduction here, but I thought it was important, as you know, misinformation can be extremely detrimental to this important work moving forward as a school district and community. So at this time, I'm going to introduce Dr. Amanda Cooper from the Diversity Center. I'm asking her to walk through the first couple of slides, and the team here will kind of interject as we go through the presentation. Certainly, Board of Education, if you have any questions or comments throughout, feel free to interject as we go, and there'll be an opportunity at the end as well. So Dr. Cooper, the floor is yours.
Great. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much, Dr. Hunt. I am so happy to be with you all tonight to share about the great work that has been accomplished this year in our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice Task Force, or DEIJ. Tonight, I'm joined by several members of our task force, and we'll be presenting the progress and outcomes of the work that has been done this school year with you all. If you could please, okay, we're on the right slide. Thank you. I'd like to start with a review of who participated in the task force and whose voices are represented in our work. As Dr. Hunt shared at the start of the school year, an invitation to participate in the task force went out to the general community, and we had a really tremendous response from many people that volunteered to be a part of this process, and it's only grown over time. From that group, we identified 10 co-chairs that volunteered to serve as leaders of 4 primary stakeholder groups. And the groups were students, parents, educators, and then community and school leadership. These co-chairs led monthly subcommittee meetings. They played a key role in our general task force meetings, and they also participated in a monthly steering committee meeting. And their leadership was really invaluable to the process, and we're all incredibly grateful for their passion and dedication to this work. The community's engagement and participation in these efforts was also incredible for a year-long process. The task force consisted of 90 members, all volunteers again, that participated either as general task force members or those who are really active in our subcommittees as well. The work that we're going to share with you this evening serves as a representation of those experiences, hopes, dreams, and feedback of those members of your community. Again, representing the voices of students, parents, educators, and community and school leadership. If you could please advance. Thank you. As a brief review of the process that we used this year, we used appreciative inquiry, which is a world-renowned method for strategic planning that originated right in our backyard at Case Western Reserve University. Appreciative inquiry is a really great tool for building community. It's used a lot for developing shared visions, building momentum, and then also creating agency for change within a community that really empowers its members to take action. Appreciative inquiry uses a 5D model, which you can see on the slide here, starting with define, where you identify and describe the scope of your project. And the scope of this work that we accomplished this year included coming up with our vision for DEIJ in the district and also an action plan. The next stage was discovery, where you identify what's already working well within a system and engage all stakeholders in an appreciation of strengths. This stage is really great for building community and results in the development of design criteria, which can then be used to support action planning efforts. The next stage is dream, where you spend time imagining what could be and engage the group in a visioning for the future. During this stage, the group developed its shared vision for DEIJ, which you'll learn about in just a moment. And then next you move to the design phase, where you develop a plan for how you're going to go about reaching that dream. During the design stage, the group gained experience with several different tools, which can be used over and over again to support the implementation of your action plan and your efforts moving forward. And then finally, we have the destiny stage, which is where we are right now. And this stage centers on all that we've done and we've learned thus far, taking that and putting it into action. So at this point, we'll transition to talking about the vision.
Thank you. We're going to turn it over to a few of our staff members, Dr. Fishman and Mrs. Waite, to kick us off and work through some of the kind of the vision statements that were created.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Hunt. I'm remembering specifically some vision statements that our educators subcommittee were working on, and they mostly have to do with creating a curriculum or using a curriculum and teaching methods that are just and inclusive, respectful of diversity. We also named as a vision that we would provide both curricular and extracurricular opportunities for students to learn from and about individuals, communities, the materials they use, and experiences that are representative of the larger world. One other of our visions had to do with just advancing, as you would expect, advancing the goals of DEIJ, fostering greater DEIJ through education and training.
Thank you, Dr. Fishman. And I mentioned, I think, kind of an overarching statement that we looked at, and that was really about culture and creating just equitable culture that's inclusive, safe, and respectful for all of our students. And, kind of a level of accountability that we're all responsible for our actions and the words that we say, and creating that culture within our schools. I'm going to turn it over to Mary Beth Webster, talk a little bit about some of the community input in terms of the vision.
I believe your microphone's off, Ms. Webster.
Whoops, sorry. In our group, one specific vision that we talked about is knowing and using the correct pronouns, spelling and pronunciation of every individual's name as defined by that individual. And we agreed that that's a fairly simple thing to do and with a lot of importance to people.
Thank you. We also talked about kind of the inclusive environment in terms of, facilities that we create and the facilities that we have are kind of representation of diverse groups within our staff, and the processes and systems we have in place to kind of embrace candidates of diversity, as well as a district that is allocating the necessary financial and human resources to promote this work and create this inclusive environment that we talked about. Mary Beth, I know there's one other comment from the community as well.
The community subgroup found or came to the vision that we would find and include community partners who support the goals of DEIJ. And like Dr. Hunt talked about in the introduction, that involves a real effort to communicate to the greater community and to include the greater community as members of this, working on this, and that started in the fall, but also embracing new members to get involved as we continue our work.
Yeah, and that's really seeking kind of those change agents that, as this initiative is certainly, within a school, but it's in with a broader community context, and making sure we engage the broader community to be a part of this. Mike, we're going to transition into goal number 1, which is about the experience of our community specifically. And I asked Mary Beth to kind of talk about that goal and some of the actionable items that were discussed within the group.
Right. So we talked about our vision, and then getting more specifically, to actually move towards that vision, we came up with some goals that would help us move towards that vision. And we came up with 5 goals, but our first goal was to understand the experiences of our community. And we came up with specific strategies to do that. Our specific strategies involved collecting and analyzing data using a culture and climate survey about diversity. And we talked about how that survey would be available to students. Not the exact survey for each person, but some type of survey so that we could get feedback would be available to parents, community members, students, teachers, so that everyone would have a voice. We also talked about collecting and analyzing data with the use of focus groups and listening sessions, because not everybody feels comfortable giving their opinion in a survey. Some would rather talk as a group. We also talked about individual interviews and how we could use that to collect information, because perhaps some people would only feel comfortable on a one-on-one types conversation. We talked about conducting an equity audit, where we did, much like a tax audit or any other kind of audit, kind of took a broad perspective of the district and what was going on there, and seeing how our current actions reflected our vision. And along with that, we wanted to look specifically at efforts, groups, activities that are currently existing and that have existed before, and look to see if those actually are contributing to our DEIJ efforts, or do we need different groups, or do we need to support what we already have? So basically we set out some strategies that would help us understand the experiences of our community.
Like if you go to goal 2 is really about kind of building systems and structures of support for this initiative. And one of the conversations is kind of who owns this work. I mean, these are difficult conversations. They're going to take a great deal of kind of engagement of not only our school community but the broader community. So making decisions on who would be responsible for the facilitation of that work moving forward and making that a priority. Building kind of building upon the numbers that Dr. Cooper explained, but bring in more diversity within that group with various opinions on how this should look and where we should go with this. So kind of building and continuing the work of those that have put in so much time in making sure this initiative is sustainable as this work is kind of evolving, and then taking a kind of an equity lens to procedures and policies and practices and the things that are already in place in the district to make sure that hiring, recruiting, and policy systems in place have kind of that equity lens to them and going through that work. And again, kind of just integrating context-based recommendations from the assessments that Mary Beth had mentioned. So that's the majority of what lies in under goal number 2. Mike, if you could go to goal number 3, I'm going to turn this over to Mrs. Waite to talk, as most of this was done by the teacher.
So goal number 3 involved providing education and leadership development opportunities, as well as training needed for our vision. So we felt that this was an important goal to have in order to give our staff and community a stepping stone toward achieving diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice within our district and establishing what we envision that to look like. So we talked about some different steps toward achieving this goal could include developing standards for our approach, as well as definitions of DEIJ elements, and making sure that these are accessible to all. So whether that is accessible on our district website, posted in classrooms, those are some different possibilities. We also talked about providing educational opportunities and workshops accessible to all stakeholder groups. So students, staff, educators, parents, and community members. And this could include things like text studies or speaker informational sessions. And we also talked about creating additional extracurricular opportunities in the district centered on diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice.
If we move to the next slide, our goal number 4 was to develop a Chagrin Falls voice for DEIJ. Because we have so many engaged stakeholders and they're interested in learning about our efforts surrounding DEIJ, we all agreed that it's important that we have a voice going forward to make it known what we're doing in this area. And so we came up with some strategies for that. And one of the strategies that the student group was particularly interested in was developing a DEIJ focused social media presence, because truthfully, that's how they communicate these days. And then another strategy was to use a consistent and ongoing communication process to provide updates on our efforts, so that people would know what was going on and they could know that they find that out on a regular basis. Then we thought we should develop the awareness, knowledge, and skills of our community through newsletters and publications. Those are some of the ways that we talked about community or communication. And we're acknowledging that at this point, it's important to have a communication strategy around these efforts. Just as Dr. Hunt said in the beginning, sometimes outside forces come in and unfortunately don't help with communication because they give us the wrong impression of what's going on or misinformation about what's going on. So this is the part of the beginning stage of communicating, and as our efforts become more move into the future, we anticipate that our communication strategy will move into the future, will become more full-blown, and we will work, be able to give more information to everyone as there's more information to give.
Go ahead, goal number 4, Mike.
5, I think.
I'm sorry, goal 5, Mike. And that's Dr. Fishman.
Hi, as you would expect from the educators subcommittee, we were very focused on how education can help with this initiative. And so we thought about things like, if we're going to develop these inclusive and just teaching methods, inclusive and just curriculum, we want to make sure that we're using books and materials that are representative of diverse groups, diverse cultures and diverse voices. We thought about making sure that we're tuned into either existing methods or that we develop a method ourselves for just kind of appraising what our current levels of what we perceive to be equitable instruction, and just finding out about what is that perception and how would we rate ourselves, doing that kind of reflective work through some kind of an existing survey or focus groups, as were mentioned earlier, possibly face-to-face interviews, all came up as possibilities. We also thought that as part of this group's, or as part of this goal, a strategy might be to conduct some research just to find out where are the kind of the hallmarks of equity and justice and inclusion, where are those models existing right now, and finding out what's going on in those either the corporate world or in the teaching world and in schools, to see how those models either could be adapted or might be something we want to avoid in our efforts. So all of the things that we spoke about were had to do with adapting and updating our curriculum. We thought also about, our grading methods and our ways of employing discipline and making sure that those things were aligned with fostering greater diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice.
Mike, if you want to go to next steps for me. Obviously, I just want to recognize, I want to thank Dr. Cooper from the Diversity Center facilitating these conversations and work. I also want to recognize and thank all of the participants in this group that I think have really laid kind of the foundation and the big buckets of where the work has to happen within the district. I think in terms of next steps, it's working on communicating this vision and goals to the broader community as we kind of transition and move into the next school year. Continue the work of this committee with the expanded members that I spoke of a little bit earlier, to bring more people to the table to have the conversations and data gathering of information as we go. I know the board is going to work with Dr. Penzarski, who we've had conversations regarding this work on what specific actions will roll out and when, and as the school district transitions into strategic planning at some point. I think the goal is that this work would roll right underneath that and become a part of the broader strategic plan in terms of the district and making those decisions. So I just want to thank those that help present today, and all those that have been on their community, hopefully that we're able to watch from home. I think your work is really going to set the foundation for this work moving forward. And also, again, like to thank the Diversity Center. We had we had a lot of student involvement, and one of our students that was involved was Jeremy Kavanaugh. And Jeremy spoke at graduation about our school district and how he felt that no other school would be as inclusive and receptive to his journey and the things that he was able to experience and go through here in Chagrin Falls. So when you think about appreciative inquiry, it's celebrate success, because there's a lot of successes to be had, and then where are the gaps that we need to maybe fill in and improve the student experience. And I think that's what this work has been about. So thanks to everyone involved. I don't want to take up their whole night, so I'm going to open it up to questions from the board for the committee before I kind of give them permission to log off here. So do you have any questions or comments from the board at this time?
I guess one that I had was on the on kind of the next steps. So does the committee continue to meet over the summertime, or is it putting it on hold until this fall?
I think there's an interest to continue to meet. I know the board kind of wants to come together and make some decisions. We certainly have talked about conducting some focus groups, because there's a feeling that kind of understanding the stories of people that are in these positions within our district is an important next step. So some of that work could happen over the summer. There's an opportunity for that to happen. So I think there's an interest in that, and an opportunity to continue the work. Maybe not with the entire committee, all 70 members, but with subsets of different groups, kind of gathering that information as we kind of move into next year.
Right, and as I remember, there was it the 5 Ds as part of the process? So does that mean that did they kind of make the circle all the way around as a committee, and then now the circle kind of begins again, is at a deeper level? Is that right? Am I understanding that? Or
yeah, I don't want to speak, it's hard for me to speak of next steps, quite honestly, but I think there's an interest in evaluating all of the work and the action steps that have been done at the board and administrative level, and then kind of make some priority decisions on what are the appropriate first steps in this journey. So I think that's kind of where this lands and might be the most appropriate next steps.
There's still work, Phil, to answer your question. Like the goal that talks about developing a voice for DEIJ, that's in reference to, even within the task force, if you were to ask each of the 90 people what each of those words represented and how we could look to improve our student experience, you would hear a lot of different ideas. I'm sure as board members right now, we all have a lot of different ideas. For me, there's a lot of opportunity and low-hanging fruit in inclusivity. I think we do. I think there are shining examples of where we do a great job. And I think we could learn from, areas where maybe we don't and improve there. So drilling down at that level and starting to have conversations with a more broad audience is important.
Yeah, one thing you did mention, Bob, and I definitely wanted to highlight again from being graduation this last Sunday. I mean, Jeremy's speech was, or his experience share really that he gave of his experience at Chagrin was very, to me at least, was very encouraging. I mean, I was very happy to hear of, his experience as he came through the school and graduated. And yeah, it was very, very encouraging to hear his experience and how, how the community, really has been working with everybody. So I was very happy to hear that. I'm concerned as, these committees form, it's like, well, are we off base or not? And his speech, definitely, or his experience let me feel pretty, of course, you're never at the perfect place, right? I mean, you can always improve, but it made me feel good about the direction about the place that we already are.
There are a lot of positive things for us to celebrate, and that's one of the neat things about the appreciative inquiry process is it really builds on what we're doing right, what we're doing well. One of the ones that I loved, I think several groups came up with the same example of the Tiger Perk coffee shop and what an amazing growth opportunity that has been for a subset of our students and how that has integrated those students into our student population in a way that they might not have been previously. So that's a great example of an initiative that we'd like to replicate and have more like that, happening in our district. I think, my view of this is it resonates so strongly with personalized learning. And, every year our staff spends a lot of time on learning about our students, the tests that they take or just interactions with them or peeling the state report card layers apart to understand, are there subgroups in our district that need different type of attention because they're not performing? Or are there groups that are performing extraordinarily well that we want to learn from why that is such a successful subgroup? And I think this initiative is very similar. And what we spend a lot of time this year is saying, where are our blind spots? Where are our gaps? What are the stories that we haven't heard? And a lot of the work that came out of it was identifying the work that we still need to do. So we asked a lot of questions and we defined a methodology for getting some answers to our questions, hearing stories directly from students and parents and community members, looking at our curriculum to see, maybe there is outdated material or a better way to teach, certain things. So, I think although the work really kind of progressed rapidly after the events of last summer, it's work that we've always been doing in the district to better understand the experience of our students and make sure that every student is getting the type of education that they deserve and access to resources and things like that. So, and then I also want to just say that the role of the Diversity Center was really to lead us through this process, which is that appreciative inquiry process, to develop a plan of how we want to approach this. And now it's turning to the district and with a new superintendent and to the Board of Education to really decide where it goes from here, who will lead it, how quickly will things be explored? And that's something I think we need to talk about as a group with our new superintendent as well, with a promise to all of the people that contributed so much to this work that's been done, that we will be continuing. We're just transitioning right now and figuring out what does that look like as we go into the summer months.
I just want to say one thing that really resonated with me tonight. I think Mary Beth Webster was talking about it in goal 1, addressing people how they want to be addressed, knowing how to pronounce somebody's name and things like that. That's huge to, make people feel included and accepted. So that really, I think is an important thing that was identified.
Yeah, I want to also comment on goal 1. I heard this from Bob at the end, and I just would like to know and hope that we really can focus this on our student experience as the driving force, finding out that idea of finding out what's going on with our students, what experiences they're having. One thing I didn't hear mentioned that might be worth looking into is when people leave the district, why are they leaving the district? Do we have an exit interview process? Do we know if people are pulling their kids out? You'll hear, oh, it was social, oh, it was academic. I don't know if we capture that data, and I think that might be something that would be worth looking at. But again, making it about creating an experience, fixing an experience that's negative for our students, and moving forward on inclusion, because I think the inclusion piece is especially big.
Also, the goal about education and leadership. It's easy to say we want to have a classroom environment where differing opinions can be expressed, but it's a challenge to a teacher to stand at the front of the room and navigate that conversation in a way that remains respectful of everyone and is calling in all of the voices. And so one of the things we heard from the educator group is the opportunity for more support with education and leadership training, just to be better prepared to participate in those dialogues.
Well, and making sure that there's viewpoint diversity, and that there's healthy discourse, and that people know how to respond when they disagree. And that, if we're educating, it seems to me that if we're teaching our children one particular viewpoint, we're not really doing a very good job of educating them for the world they're going to enter into. And it's the critical thinking and the ability to discuss issues you don't necessarily agree with. And obviously that's a different issue in 2nd grade than it is in 12th grade, but that really needs to be something that's addressed throughout the district.
Yeah, I think a lot of feedback is really appropriate, and I think this is you can already see how kind of these goals in these areas can serve as a framework to kind of guide the next steps as action begins to happen. So thank you for that feedback. I want to give an opportunity. You are all welcome to stay on and spend your evening with us, but feel like you might have a few other things going on. I appreciate our teaching staff, Dr. Cooper, to work with the district. Mary Beth, your commitment to this and facilitating our crazy subgroup. I appreciate your efforts, and I look forward to kind of checking in on you guys in the future and all the progress that's been made for students. So thank you very much. All right, I am going to, if there's no other questions, I'm going to continue on with the next item on our agenda, which is compliance with Senate Bill 210. And this is the annual update that you all look forward to, that I have to essentially say that we are compliant with Senate Bill 210. It is essentially the, well, I am logged out completely. It is essentially around the USDA smart snacks requirements, the federal requirements for our school district. And I annually have to tell the Board of Education that we're compliant with this. in terms of snacks and beverages sold in our schools. And Marty is very aware of the federal guidelines and stays within them. So if there's any questions there, I would be happy to take them. Might be the easiest report I give all year long.
Check the box.
Yeah, check the box. The final report is kind of I guess, an update on where we're at with our summer COVID safety plan. And I want to recognize and thank our building principals, Chris Woofter, Jen Benko. We have been kind of trying to follow the guidance, since Governor DeWine issued, or let us know that he was going to be repealing all orders regarding some of the COVID mitigation strategies and maskings as of June 2nd and what that meant for public schools. And I want to give you some perspective on the information we have, because I think you need to understand that this is really a moving target. So obviously Governor DeWine initially said that, on June 2nd, all of that would be repealed. In his statement that came out this morning, he said, "It is important that we all still remember that there are a significant number of Ohioans who remain unvaccinated and are at risk, including everyone under the age of 12. It's important that those not fully vaccinated continue to wear masks indoors and follow other preventative measures to keep themselves as healthy as possible." Kind of how we were interpreting the guidance and making decisions moving forward was that based on this information, students in grades 7 through 12, when they return, assuming things are kind of as they are now, numbers are continuing to drop, that those students that have been vaccinated would be permitted to return without masks in the fall of next year. Unfortunately, we have students returning June 8th, and most of those are elementary students. And based on that information and that statement from the governor, we felt like we would continue with masking in the school building for our learning labs and environments based on this guidance and this information. However, when students were going outside, either a teacher takes them out to do a lesson outside or onto the playground, they could remove their masks. Obviously, students have the opportunity and the right to keep their masks on. So that is kind of how we drew up our plan and summer recommendation for the Board of Education to approve this evening. That lasted all of until today, when I sat on a call, and both Lake and Geauga County are moving towards no mask for anyone under 10 or 11 will be required. And then anyone that is vaccinated, 10 and above, would have the opportunity to not wear a mask. So that obviously flies directly in the face of what the governor's statement said this morning regarding masking. So I guess I present this to you that we've got a lot of, conflicting information. Cuyahoga County, we did submit our plan because our summer learning labs in Cuyahoga County, we submitted our plan to Cuyahoga County. They've been fairly quiet in terms of any kind of public statements on masking, but they did support our plan in terms of its rationale that we put together. So,
Bob, can I just interrupt to make sure I understand? The 12 and up is consistent, right? Masks, no masks for those fully vaccinated?
Correct.
Okay. It's the new piece of information is the no mask for anyone potentially 11 and under as well.
Well, let me be in full disclosure. They said 10 and under, and I pointed out that left a void with 11-year-old who's sitting out. What do we do with them? So they're kind of rephrasing, I think, that guidance before it comes out. I think we will hear that from Geauga County in the next couple of days. I guess my recommendation for the board is that we stay the course with what we have here for June. We've got summer school sessions, a couple of days in June, and then there's a break in July, and we come back in August. So we adopt this summer COVID safety plan based on basically masking our elementary students, 12 and under, in the learning labs They can take their masks off when they're outside. They can keep them on if they, if the parent would like them to do that and directs them to do so. We can, I think at this point, acknowledge 7 through 12 students, that are coming into district for sports and activities and working out that are vaccinated are not required to wear a mask, and the same would apply to staff and adults. If you are vaccinated, you would not have to wear a mask. So that's all articulated in the plan that we put together and that we're asking the board to approve tonight. I felt like it was necessary to kind of give you some perspective on the guidance that could be shifting and changing. So happy to answer any questions, or if you want to have a conversation, a deeper conversation about the expectations for June, we can certainly do that as well.
Where did the exemptions get drafted on the exemption form? Where did they come from?
So we've always had those exemptions. Those were in place from last fall, and those were around health and safety. Most of it fell with some, autistic students, special education students that, putting a mask on was something that was not appropriate. So there was always an exemption there for masks.
Is there an exemption for the parent who doesn't feel it's appropriate for their child to wear a mask?
There's not. That would be a change in what we do. We would essentially say, we're going to go with the guidance of Geauga County at this point and let you make a decision on whether you want your child to be in a mask or not.
And you're recommending staying where we are because?
I'm recommending because we've got conflicting information. The governor clearly stated that unvaccinated people, including, and I'm quoting him, including everyone under the age of 12, it's important that those that not fully vaccinated continue to wear a mask indoors and follow other preventative measures to keep themselves healthy as possible. I feel like this has to shake itself out. I mean, this all came down today. Mm-hmm. We start June 8th, so that's next week. I guess it's certainly a more conservative approach for our elementary folks. I think we can acknowledge, for those folks that are looking at next year, current trend says 7-12 is definitely coming back, and it's looking like even K-6 is going to come back without masks. But I think that has to be kind of figured out between the health departments. I point blank asked the question, how can you put something out that's contradictory to what the governor stated? And essentially at this point, there's no orders. These are just our recommendations for your consideration. So it's all floating back to locals to make these decisions.
The students that have been invited to the summer programming, what is the breakout of ones who remained virtual all year? Is it a lot of those students, or is it a mix of students that remained virtual and some that came back in the classroom?
I don't have that data, and I don't think I'd grab it quickly, but I would say the vast majority of those students are students that were in school during. We call this wait time in education.
Well, the inconsistency is problematic, and we could weigh in and tell you to do something different tonight, and I suspect you're going to have new information by noon tomorrow. So I agree that waiting and to see how things shake out is the right course of action right now.
I absolutely agree with that statement Sharon just said. I mean, it's a no-win situation, but I think we have to go with the conservative approach, and the students have been wearing masks all year. I think overwhelmingly it went fine. We did have 154 students in our district that had COVID this year. So for the people who still don't think it exists, it does. Hopefully it's going away, but until we really have a little more evidence that it's done, or a little more direction, I think we stay the course.
Yeah, and I guess I mentioned that we do this through June, and it'd be reevaluated in July based on guidance that obviously is changing. But if something firm comes out, there's no reason we couldn't come back June 16th and say, you know what, let's make a change now. So again, that option is always there.
Bob, if a student were to get sick over the summer, what would be the quarantining requirement?
Same as they currently are. Quarantining is still in place.
So is it, can you remind me how many days? I guess what I'm wondering is, it seems like if you got COVID during the summer, it would have a pretty big impact on your ability to finish the summer material.
Yeah, so it's 10-day quarantine, and that would still be in place. However, and it doesn't really apply to our students right now. If you're vaccinated and your contact is close, in close proximity, you do not have to quarantine. So like our older students that, essentially, when we play sports or at a camp, if those students are vaccinated and someone came back positive, those people would not have to quarantine because they've been vaccinated.
But for this population that you're talking about, they would have to, and then anybody within 6 feet that they were around in the classroom would also have to.
Yeah.
I was thinking it could have a big impact if even a couple of students happen to get sick over the summer.
Yeah, and we will still have spacing, and so we still kind of recognizing and acknowledging those mitigation strategies. And I'd point out that I think it's 3 weeks in a row we've had 0 cases, so the numbers are trending really well, and even our quarantines as well as positive cases. So I understand this is conservative. I would just like a little more clarity before we jump on a recommendation for our younger students. And to Mary Kay's point, I know they're less vulnerable, if you will, and certainly they or in terms of intensity of symptoms, fall into the category, less hospitalization. Certainly, risk of death is very, very low. But I can tell you, having a first grader at home that had serious symptoms, it's still, young people still can get this, and it can impact them. So I think we just need to be cautious and wade through this over the next, couple of weeks.
And then just to be really clear, when they're on the playground, though, they're unmasked, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And we have no intentions next year of asking for vaccination cards. I'm repeatedly getting asked that question.
No, I don't think you want to get into the business of trying to obtain and monitor that data. There's a litany of issues that would come with that.
And that's really a state law issue.
Yeah. Okay, so later on the agenda, I am asking approval for the summer plan. It changes expectations for employees and students. And essentially, just to highlight the changes again, any staff member or anyone essentially that's in the district that is over 12 years old and has been vaccinated does not have to wear a mask. Those that are unvaccinated 12 years and above would have to or would be required to wear a mask. Our students under the age of 12, so not accessible to the vaccine right now, will continue to have spacing and masking indoors and be able to remove their mask outdoors when playing and or if they have an outside classroom activity. That's kind of the recommendation that is articulated in this plan that I'll ask you to vote upon under my recommendations later in the agenda. If there's no other questions there, that would conclude my report.
All right, thank you, Dr. Hunt. Next, we will move on to audience community participation. I've actually received 4 separate requests to read information or read letters to the board during this section. So the I'll just read them in the order that I received them. So the first is from Carol Dolan of 57 Water Street in Chagrin. Good evening. I am a Chagrin Falls parent who participated in the DEIJ task force this past year. While I find many of the vision statements admirable and worthy of the school community's efforts, I have concerns of a more macro level that were not fully addressed in the exploratory work by the group. The meaning of diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice needs to be discussed, defined, and then accepted by our school community. I have a feeling many of us in the school community have different considerations for DEIJ. From my point of view, a public school needs to consider and respect a variety of worldviews, many of which could be contrary within a classroom. Teachers also bring their own perspectives to the classroom, which may run contrary to a student's. How do we deal with this? What is the common ground in a school community with a diversity of ideologies and worldviews? What forums for respectful discussion and appropriate training can we utilize? How can we get our individual or identities or identity groups' needs met while understanding that we may need to agree to disagree? And how do we identify the difference between hate-isms versus genuine ignorance or differing worldviews? And supposing we could identify those differences, how can we then all agree upon an appropriate response? If we can address these big questions, our community has a better chance of committing to a set of standards that include the themes of diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. I look forward to continuing the work of DEIJ in Chagrin Falls and beyond. Take care, Carol Dolan. Okay. Give me just a moment. Okay, second statement is from Dana Bordner, 401 Deer Court in Chagrin Falls. Sorry, just trying to get this to the right place. Okay, a few weeks ago, I became aware of an ongoing effort to implement a district-wide diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice program. The district seems to have covertly pursued this agenda with little publicity or transparency. We found out about the program very late in the process and only by chance. DEIJ are all important to our society on a macro level, and parents should be responsible for fostering these values in children from a young age. Unfortunately, most programs being introduced in schools are having the opposite effect by forcing kids, particularly young ones, to identify what makes them different. The youngest members of society only see humans and segregated people based on their race, gender, religion, etc. Is causing more division than harmony. Diversity should be allowed to happen organically and not pursued just for the sake of diversity. Hiring practices and evaluation should be meritorious and weighted to assure equity. Agendas such as critical race theory should never be directly or indirectly pushed into our schools. Sexual identity from a perspective of bathroom use and sports participation should be based solely on biological gender. We appreciate the fact that some individuals may identify as a different gender than their biological gender, but that education should not be part of our curriculum. The Diversity Center of Northeast Ohio, the company hired by our district to help implement this new program, has a self-proclaimed mission to end bias, bigotry, and racism. Are racism and bigotry a public concern in Chagrin Falls? What exactly is prompting this push for DEIJ? How much taxpayer money is being used to fund this agenda? How will these programs benefit our children's education? What are the hidden agendas within the JEDI programs that have already been implemented in other districts? We would like specific answers to all these questions and a detailed outline to any new programs being considered for the 2021-22 school year. As taxpayers funding these programs and parents who trust our elected leaders to implement a curriculum to provide our children with the highest quality education, we expect transparency and honesty. A well-rounded education should focus on math, science, language arts, history, technology, and some social studies. This is what has made our school district so successful and will continue to assure our children's success moving forward. Sincerely, Dana Bordner. Okay, one more second. Sorry, almost there. Okay, next is from Nina and Colin Eastman of 205 Gray Fox Run in Bentleyville. Dear Dr. Hunt and ladies and gentlemen of the Board of Education, I'm a parent of 2 children in the Chagrin Falls School District. It has just recently come to my attention that the Chagrin Falls School Board is planning to implement an education program, DEIJ, that incorporates critical race theory and equity-based education. I'm strongly opposed to this education plan. I have been concerned that the United States has fallen considerably far behind other countries in education, especially in math and science, and the lack of knowledge regarding basic history of our nation and government. I had hoped our Chagrin schools would be concerned about that instead of promoting theories that do not teach sound basic education tenets to improve knowledge and education based on merit and skill. School board members have a duty and responsibility to provide the best and highest level of education for students who will compete on a national and world playing field. This K-12 education is the basis for all children's lives, even though a school board member's tenure may be short. Please refrain from joining the trend and improve our children's education so it will be among the best schools in our country. Thank you, Nina and Colin Eastman. Okay, the fourth is from Ingrid and Bill Porter, 120 Countryside Drive in Chagrin Falls. Just a second, this goes somewhere else. Dr. Hunt and school board members, we have become aware that the direction of the Chagrin Falls School District may be heading and want you to know our thoughts as taxpaying citizens of our great area. This district has an ongoing effort to implement diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice in a program to be taught in our schools. This is a new direction for our district. And while it sounds great on the surface, let's dive in and see what exactly all that means. We have 4 children through our Chagrin Falls graduates, and our last is currently attending Chagrin Falls High School. Our first 3 children received a stellar education in this district, and so far our 4th is as well. One question comes to mind though, why are we pivoting our curriculum? Their curriculum should focus on mathematics, science, English, technology, history, arts, and the social studies. Well-rounded students have a broad-based education in all these subjects. This curriculum will use our God-given talents to help all children become the best versions of themselves. Equity, that's what we strive for in our great country. Equality, that's what we strive for in our great country, not equity. Yes, we are all born equal with God-given rights. Equity is the opposite of equality and forces people to give up part of what they have worked hard for and give it to others who have not. Critical race theory is based on Marxist theories where all people are categorized into groups based on their color. It is racist at the core and is wrong. This program is designed to push people away from each other and separate them into groups based on skin color. It is the opposite of what Dr. Martin Luther King worked so hard to accomplish. It is the opposite of what our children have been taught up to now in this district. Further, sexual identity is a private matter that should not be driving our curriculum. Bathroom use and sports participation should only be based on a person's biological gender at birth, not taught in the classroom. The Diversity Center of Northeast Ohio has been hired to implement this new program of diversity, equity, and inclusion. As taxpayers funding these programs, we expect transparency and honesty from our elected school board members. What exactly are they going to teach our children? Why are we pivoting from the great education our older children received? Our older children are not racist. They do not exclude people. They are not biased. They are well-rounded citizens of this great country. We reject critical race theory being taught in our school district. Thank you, Bill and Ingrid Porter.
It's disappointing that we couldn't have our meeting in person tonight, and I understand that the Diversity Center isn't participating in in-person forums yet, and it was important to have them here, but these conversations are so much better as dialogue. I'm hoping that the people that wrote letters tonight, had their concerns addressed in this meeting about what the DEIJ task force has and hasn't been about. And, there's just a lot of misinformation already out there about what the district was beginning with this task force.
Yeah, I obviously I'm very new to the board, and so I don't have the same history that everybody has as far as where this started and where it ended up. But it seems to me from listening to the presentation that we want to encourage everyone to give their opinions and their thoughts, and that there's room at the table for everybody, and that the next step would be to include and incorporate people's views and goals and opinions on how, if we feel we need to improve the education in certain ways that our kids are experiencing, and if we identify areas where there's a failure of inclusion or any of these other categories, we want everybody involved and to move forward together as a community. And that's the only way these things are going to stick. So please continue to send your opinions, and please come to meetings and participate when the opportunity arises.
Yeah, and Mr. Rankin, I addressed a lot of these, so I won't belabor the point. I guess just to be really clear, the Diversity Center was hired to facilitate a process to get us to a point where we had kind of a broader vision and goals to work under and make decisions upon. In my opinion, they effectively did that. They certainly, as an organization, offer a lot of programs. One of the letters addressed JEDI. That's a completely separate program in which you actually bring someone from the Diversity Center into the school district. We have not committed to anything beyond what we kind of currently have contracted for. Certainly, it's a resource, a community resource that is there that the district could consider in various aspects moving forward. But that hasn't, those decisions haven't been made and commitments haven't been made. And additionally, the word program kept being used. There is no program that is being adopted and implemented. I would go back to, we have state standards, we have standards within our advanced placement. All of those are there. Certainly, issues within DEIJ are within standards. They always have been, and part of the program that one individual mentioned with their 3 older children's going through. So I think there's a level of misinformation with some of these. I know some of these had very specific questions, so I tried to address some of the themes. If warranted, I'll jump back into those emails and try to respond specifically to some of those questions. But hopefully, as was mentioned, this kind of shed some light on what actually is taking place, and then what next steps will need to be considered and taken by the board and administration moving forward.
I would just like to add, we're trying to educate global citizens. And this really, as much as this task force was new this year, this is really not new. We've been talking about teaching tolerance for years. I mean, it's about understanding your community, but our community is getting bigger. The community changes, and it's not it's not just your community anymore. We're global citizens. So I noticed in my 12 years on the board, every year we approve the books that are going to be read in English classes. The books have changed. We have books about all different types of people and different types of cultures to grow our students. This is kind of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's a, the focus of this group and, focus of this board, I know, and the focus of DEIJ is, to improve the already great curriculum, the already great education that we provide, not to overhaul it, not to pivot it, to improve it, continuous improvement. Any other comments? All right, thank you. And we do encourage folks to submit their comments, and participate in our meetings. Yes, hopefully soon live. Next up, we have consent. If I could have a motion for consent agenda items 7A through 7D. Thank you. 7A through 7T.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mary Kay. Do we have any discussion of the items? All right. Seeing none, Ms. Brudno, if you'd please call the roll.
Mr. Rankin,
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mrs. Bros,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes.
All right, moving on to superintendent's recommendations. If I could have a motion for item 8A through 8E.
So moved.
Thank you, Catherine. And a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Lori. And Dr. Hunt, if you'd like to step us through these items.
Yes, item A is the resignation of Dawn Bowen, who has served as an educational aide in the high school for many years. We appreciate Dawn's service to the district. She's been in a variety of roles in the high school. Item B is the recommendation to approve the resignation of Alex Miskinis. She has been commuting back and forth to West Virginia to see her husband, and has finally secured a job in employment in West Virginia. So she's been a hard worker for our staff. We'll miss her, but glad she gets to go be with her family, and wish her well moving forward. Item C is the recommendation to approve Molly Clodar as the new technology integration coach. As you know, that's a vacancy created by Nancy Kevern. Molly has served as a high school English teacher for 10 years. At Streetsboro High School. She's also served the district as a technology specialist and integration coach. Mike and the team that interviewed Molly spoke very highly of her time there. I had the opportunity to interview her, and just a lot of enthusiasm, kind of understands the importance of being patient and meeting staff members where they're at to support them moving forward. So I think is going to bring a lot to the school district. So congratulations to Molly and that recommendation to replace Nancy. The second recommendation is to replace Nancy Vondracht at Chagrin Falls High School in the high school business program. Recommending John Bacalar. He obtained a bachelor's degree from Kent State University, majoring in integrated business education with a minor in physical education. He's earned a master's in arts of technology from Bowling Green State University, and has been at Crestwood for 13 years. Very innovative approach to teaching of business, and I think is going to bring a fresh look to that program, as I know Becky and Monica are going to look at kind of our offerings and see what upgrades can be made. So again, like to welcome him to the district. And then item E is the summer COVID plan as discussed in my report. And again, we will continue to monitor information and make whatever changes necessary based on the information that we received regarding masking.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, Ms. Brudno, if you'd please call the roll.
Mr. Rankin,
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mrs. Bros,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes.
All right, fantastic. Other business? Any other business on anybody's mind? You all look deep in thought, so there's got to be something out there. Or maybe you're just looking towards the end of the agenda.
I have a comment. I feel like there's a lot of legislation that's on the horizon affecting public schools. And actually, we talked a little bit about, school funding and taking a look at that. And I wonder if we should consider adding a legislative update to our board agendas. Either the legislative liaison could give a quick overview, or we could even invite a guest in to talk to us about what's happening, or of course our superintendent or treasurer could give us an update as well. But the reason I bring it up is that we have access to a lot of information and resources to educate ourselves, but I'm not sure that we're doing our job in educating our community in things that are on the horizon that can affect our school district. So I just kind of throw that out there for consideration, using our meetings to further educate ourselves, but also bring some things to light in our community that our community members may want to be aware of that could affect their taxes or curriculum that their children are learning.
We could do that. We just have to be careful. So often there's so much stuff. It's in a committee, and it's never, and from doing, I don't know, I'm going to say, okay, I've been a board member for 12 years. There are so many things like, oh, it's this time this year, here this comes again, and it goes away without ever getting action. So I would just be cautious that we don't get people all excited or bothered about something that we're pretty sure isn't going to go anywhere. But
Right.
What I've seen,
Absolutely. And maybe it's as the agenda is being put together for the superintendent and treasurer to kind of weigh in with the board president on, I would like it to be on the checklist of things that we're considering. Is there something important enough that we need to bring it to light? Do we want to invite somebody to the meeting to, give us more background on it?
I've seen some boards, as part of the board reports, the legislative liaison will do an update and just kind of pick and choose things from the OSBA legislative update that goes out to all the board members. There's a lot of information in there. Usually there's one or two things that might be like Mary Kay said, there's a lot of stuff in there that really is not of importance. But yeah, I've seen people kind of pull out the things that are kind of on the horizon and talk about those in their board update.
What do you guys think about that? Adding to the board reports, adding legislative update. And obviously if there's nothing to report, we wouldn't need to cover it, but.
I'm good with it in the board report.
Yeah, I think it's
in the meeting agenda, Phil. During the board reports was what I was trying to say. Like, when we report about capital planning committee, there could be just legislative update. And if there was anything material, could be brought forward.
I think that'll be the key, is to make it the executive summary, because as we all know, those are like, each bill is probably 200 pages. There's an incredible amount of minutia. It's got to be the highlights. that,
Yeah,
that
and only obviously things that are relevant that will impact our school district, right? I mean, things that, again, you wouldn't want to report on every single thing that's coming up in legislation, but something that could be material that might have great consequence for our students.
Oh, I think when that is the case, I think that's the time to report. And I mean, over the years, we've had an e-blast go out, like, contact your legislators. This is what's going on. I mean, I think we need to continue to do that kind of stuff. But I think when there's something important, and I know I have brought things up at times when I've seen things, I'm still hoping for a change in school funding, but I've been, talking about that for years too. But
of course, there was news on that today.
Right.
Not looking good for fair funding.
But
okay, so I think we can handle it with agenda prep. It doesn't need to be a permanent add to our board updates, but again, I feel like we have access to a lot of information that our community might appreciate also, getting more of a perspective on how these things could impact us here locally. And I feel like that's part of our job as school board members as well. So anyway, we can just, Ashley, kind of make a mental note when we're doing agenda prep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, when one of these committees, tonight out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we had one that had an announcement, so I don't think just throwing it on there and saying no report hurts anything if that's, the direction that everybody wants to go. I can certainly add
Mary,
it.
is it you this year, our legislative liaison?
I don't believe I am. I mean, I do follow a lot of this and I get to do that, but I don't know that I am the legislative.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously all of us follow these things, and Bob, you do a great job, and same with you, Ashley, of keeping us informed of things that we need to know about. But then it would fall probably to that legislative liaison to just, give the report during the meeting or decide whether there was or wasn't anything worth reporting.
I think the bigger question we could ask is, from the letters tonight, how do we continue to do a good job sharing the work that the district is doing out with the community at large? Because, there's a lot of work that happens in these meetings that, despite newsletters and the meetings being recorded and live streamed, it does seem like people are mostly getting their information from a sound bit in the Chagrin Valley Times, and that doesn't have necessarily the full context. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think that's a question we should be asking ourselves is there more we could be doing to make sure that we're bridging to the community and sharing all the relevant information?
You mean everybody doesn't watch these board meetings?
Only you, Lori.
I can't imagine.
I try to make him entertaining every once in a while.
It's a continual struggle to communicate the amount of information at the right time in the way people want to receive it. And I think we do a lot of different things doing that, but we can always improve. And of course, we're all, open to talking with and helping people understand if they have any questions about the work of the board. Ashley, did you just look up who's our legislative liaison?
I was trying. I can't because
I think it's me.
Meeting,
I think it's me.
Okay.
I'm not. We have to talk more about what we want that to look like because.
Oh, actually, I believe it's Phil.
That's
okay.
I wasn't going to say that, but that's what I thought as well. So.
Well, thank you for trying, Sharon. I was really rooting for you.
I think you just volunteered for 22.
No.
Well, I can guarantee you it will be focused and succinct.
Well, I do follow. I mean, I do read that stuff pretty well, so I can keep some notes when I read things.
Thank you. I knew I could count on you, Mary Kay. Let me, while we're discussing things, let me throw another one out there for other business. So we have talking about being in person. just a thought. I mean, we've got 1, 2, 3 more meetings this summer, you know, June 16th, August, or July 28th, August 11, and then September 1. How about if we start doing live meetings in September when we come back for the fall? I mean, it would be kind of nice to have it Zoom during the summertime. We could do them from wherever we are, but you know, in the fall, go back to doing them in person. I mean, there are benefits and detriments to both scenarios, but thoughts?
I think that sounds fine, maybe with the exception of if all the board members are around, it might be nice to have the last board meeting with Bob in person and, you know, celebrate with him and potentially take him to dinner after or something like that. I don't. The least we can give him is a free steak.
I'm all in favor of that.
I think I've been surprised we're not back in person yet, to be honest. So I'm happy to come back to in-person meetings when we're ready. I think tonight we couldn't because some of our speakers weren't, you know, their institutions didn't allow them to, but I'm fine with starting now. And, you know, as always, we accommodate board members if they need to be gone. They don't have to be at every single meeting. I guess
we would just have to, I mean, for now though, the law is you can still join a meeting remote, whereas in the past you couldn't. So if somebody is on vacation, they can join and we would have to, you know, allow them to vote and stuff. Whereas in the past, you wouldn't have been able to vote if you weren't there.
do we, have we worked through the technology issues? I know when we had some remote and some in person, it was a little complex and maybe not ideal.
Right. I mean, you could always go a little less tech and just have someone could just call in and listen and
Right.
follow along. You know, I don't know that, you know, we could just record our meetings. I don't think if we're in person, I don't think we have to do the Zoom thing.
Right.
Yeah, and that actually would work well, Mary Kay, because through BoardPack, the presentations, I mean,
Right.
I used to have trouble seeing when we were in person, so a lot of times I'd follow the presentation
Right.
on BoardPack, not in the room anyway.
Yeah.
So we good then next meeting, June 16th, to be in person and going forward?
Well, why don't we try the June 16th, see how it goes, and
Okay.
that one we can decide on the next ones.
Sorry, Bob, you get to see us in person again.
In the, what location?
Do we, I mean,
Can we go back to Sands?
Bob, do you want to pick? You want to go to Sands Community Room? You want to go to the intermediate school? Well, I don't know. The intermediate school is going to be having some work done.
Yeah, why don't you let me handle that? I'll talk to Chris and we'll figure that out. Unless there's a strong interest.
Catherine wants to walk to the meeting. She wants intermediate school.
Talk to the high school though too.
We can do that.
I just love that building. I love but if the cafeteria area is going to be having some work done, and obviously that's not ideal. Okay, I'm fine with you figuring it out, Bob. Whatever works well for the technology guys.
Okay. All right. Any other business?
No, I would just like everybody to remember tonight when we go into the 16th meeting and you see how long my agenda is on the 16th, please remember that tonight I didn't have anything for you. So.
We will try.
Could be a late dinner with Bob.
All right, so our next meeting then will be Wednesday, June 16th, location TBD, but in person. Awesome. So we are not going to go into executive session. Right. Okay, fantastic. If I could have a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
All right. And a second?
Second.
Great. Ms. Brudno, if you'd please take the roll.
Rankin,
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mrs. Bros,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes.